What, James? Today we have Doug from Nightfall Drives, and we are out in his 2014 Evora S. The question for me is, did I make a mistake ignoring the Evora when I was trying to choose my next car? But before we get into that, Doug, how long have you had this car?
I've had it 5 years now. Loved every minute. Got it because of James, actually. I found his channel during lockdown, saw the Evora history he had, and locked in on this particular sort of era.
For those of you who may not know, James's first car on the channel was an Evora 400 if I remember correctly, beautiful yellow one, but I never got to drive his Evora because we became friends after that was long gone. And there's been a few times where I've had opportunities to get out in an Evora, but for one reason or another, whether it was weather, logistics, things just happened. I never got to drive one. Now, during the Ants Next car series, I drove a host of different cars. I ended up buying the Lamborghini Gallardo LP 570-4 Superleggera Edizione Tecnica. Try and say that in one breath.
Lotus Evora S.
Lotus Evora S.
Snappy. If you've seen JayEmm's videos on this car, he's done 3 now. Initially, complete standard. Then I did the exhaust tubular back box, valve back box, and then I did put an air intake on it as well, and then all you could hear was supercharger whine, so I took that off.
And I think you made the right choice on the supercharger and the exhaust because I really like the sound of it.
This winter, just put in a Dolomite gear lever. It's transformed the gear shift. That was really a weak point of the car that is fairly common on the Series 1.
Having experienced it, I can tell you that this feels just like the Emira I drove a couple of weeks ago. So you've done a fantastic job. It is so positive. It's got a certain click and positivity to it that unfortunately the base car didn't have. You said it was a little bit squishy.
Yeah, there's a nylon bearing and something they call a blue ball. So I had blue ball issues, which I've resolved now with this new Dolomite shifter. The gearbox is a power limiting factor with these, so I think, you know, they did the Radford, Jensen Button's company,
Yep.
That was the same engine, but they couldn't use the same gearbox in the same state for that. I can't remember what horsepower that was, but and this is why I think the 430 was where you can get to with the standard setup.
How much horsepower does this one have, Doug?
The S has 345, and so for the later cars, they added a charge cooler, went to the Evora 400 for that, and then the 410, 430, squeezing a bit more out.
So, back to upgrades. Any other improvements or tweaks that you made to this car?
So it's tiny little tweaks here and there, greying out the badges, and then refurbing a few things. So yeah, I think as standard is just really the sound that's missing in this generation.
Now, as we've been sort of going down this particular road, which I think is actually really good to get a feel for how the suspension performs, I think the suspension on this is good, but for those of you who've been watching the channel for a while, you'll know that if my fillings haven't been shaken out of my teeth yet, then it's just generally too soft for me. It's not soft, but it's just not as firm as I personally enjoy. I just like it to be a bit more twitchy. I think for the average person though, this is probably about right. I think the dampers kind of allow a little bit of travel on the up side of the suspension travel that for me reduces my confidence in the car when I go over a bump. However, the bump on the suspension is just about right. However, I think as a sports car, this is set up pretty well. I think the thing that I would want slightly different, I feel like the car is just sitting a little bit too flat on its rear, and actually I would like the front just to be dropped a little lower to move some of the weight forward, because you do feel like it could potentially dig in more on the turn-in if it was given the chance to, but it just doesn't have enough weight over the front to get enough grip to do that. I think that's intentional because I think the car has been set up in a way where you're more likely to get a bit of understeer than you are to get oversteer. The suspension on these is fixed as is. There's no height adjustable collars, is there?
No.
So that might be something for you to think about if you were getting one of these. Maybe if you want to address that too, you might want to have some extra budget set aside to set the suspension how you want it. You did mention that the weight distribution was...
I think it's 3862.
That's quite
I think it's quite extreme, but 911-ish.
On my 370Z Nismo, when I put the KWV3 coilovers on it, I actually set the front up so it was just dropped a little bit lower, partly because with the spacers I had on the car, it kind of took some of the weight out of the steering wheel, and I used that to make the front a bit more pointy.
So you're talking about adding a little bit of Red Bull rake?
Yes. A little Red Bull rake.
I think people do put nitrons on them. Personally, I mean, part of the reason I've been so desperate to get to experience it is you've talked about the race car for the road feel. I think that, you know, there can be another way. You can work with the road and take care of your lower back and have a little bit of compliance and then still have that engaging excitement in the drive.
But you see, this is where I've solved the problem. I don't need to worry about ruining my lower back, because it's already gone. And in fact, that's one of the reasons why I ended up missing a couple of episodes of the Radiator Arms podcast, which, if you haven't been watching it, is me, James, JayEmm, and our friend Will. If you are looking for a car that is both sporty, but you could do a long drive in, then this could be it. And you've done quite a few long drives in this.
Yeah, we've really got into it. We've got south of France, Scotland. You can fit an awful lot of stuff in here as well. It does everything, I think.
Now that we're in a small little village, moving at 30 miles an hour, I have to say, it's just really easy to use. Now, one of the recommendations Doug gave me was to put it into sport mode. That does a couple of things.
Yeah, essentially it raises your idle and it helps with low speed manoeuvring, ironically for sport mode. But then also the throttle response the throttle map is all different. It's a much more responsive car, and it's quite a significant difference I find in the Evora. So it's worth doing.
So when we were in the car park and I had to do a bit of manoeuvring, we had to kind of go up this little ramp, and I underestimated the amount of throttle that I needed to get up that ramp, having literally had driven the car for about 2 minutes. And Doug straight away said, put it in sport mode, and I put it in sport mode and it just worked. So now that we're stuck in what I call a DRS train, a driving really slowly train, let's talk a little bit about some of the things I don't like about the Evora. Now, I'll be honest, there's probably 2 Evoras that I've looked at where I actually like the styling. Sorry, Doug, I know you love it, but there's one thing in particular I've always had an issue with this car. It's the headlights. I think the lines of this car are actually beautiful. I think it is really sleek looking, sporty looking. It's got that baby supercar profile. You know, even you yourself said it feels like a supercar to you.
Yeah.
And but the headlights, nothing wrong with the shape of them. I actually think the shape of the headlights is great. I just think they're too close together. The car is actually quite wide and the lights are just a little bit too far in from the outside of the car.
I know what you mean. You could argue it's a little bit Ryan Reynolds.
Bit Ryan Reynolds, but not in the sexiest car alive type of Ryan Reynolds sort of way. It's a minor thing, it's a nitpicky thing, but I do think it's important that when you look at a car that you really, really do like it. Now, I think some of the later cars, the GT cars, was it 410?
GT 410 and then GT 430 was the Halo car.
Yeah, so I think they did go a long way to address it somewhat, because by the time they added the splitters, it just kind of pulled the bottom of the car down, it kind of changed the proportions of the front, it kind of sort of dealt with it. Now the front end that fixed this for me, it's almost impossible to get your hands on one of these, but it was the GTE. So if I could get myself a GTE front end, I think that would solve pretty much everything that I didn't like about the looks of the Evora. With
the models for the Evora, all were pretty much the same apart from the bumpers. So you change the bumpers and it looks like the later version.
I'd say the one thing I didn't like about it at the beginning was the pedal position. Not the fact that it's slightly offset to the left, I'm used to that. The Lamborghini's way worse than this. This is similar kind of offset to what you get in something like an R8. Not a problem I noticed, as I recall, in the Emira, and that is I felt like as you put pressure on the brake, if you're braking slightly harder, the throttle is so high that you have to kind of like get your foot kind of up and over a little bit in order to get that heel and toe. I have actually been avoiding this car because I just knew that I would actually really like them, because the one that I would really want would at least be something like the 410 and the 430 GTs. That's as much as my R8 GT. One of 333 cars, one of 33 UK cars, very rare, 5.2 litre V10 supercar, would have been the same price as my Lotus, and it just felt wrong. So I think the conclusion is, yes, it was a good idea to leave the Evora off my list, because I might then not have got my Lamborghini, and I really needed to get that before I got too old to enjoy it. Now, when I'm a bit older, this might be the car that I could actually have and still get my mid-engined, almost a supercar experience without breaking my back or breaking the bank, because one of these you can pick one up for around 40,000 if I'm not mistaken. What's the sort of entry level for these?
Entry level, you could potentially 20k.
Wow, 20k.
For high milers.
So the Evora S to me seems like the kind of car that if you want to take it for a spirited run, you can. If you want to take it to the pub with a friend or your partner, you can. If you want to take it on a drive across Europe, you can. And even when you do get to your destination, one, you're not going to be exhausted, and two, that's probably a good thing, because then you get to enjoy the road that you actually drove there for. I want to say a huge thank you to Doug for letting me drive your car today. Thank you to you for watching, and please go and check out Nightfall Drives on YouTube and on Instagram. We'll leave links in the description below. And I suppose all there is to do now is to say, please like, subscribe, and comment below.